Ireland do not play a lot of Test cricket. In fact, it's not just that. They don't really play all that much first-class cricket either. And I can go a step further. Their cricket board also doesn't really focus on Test cricket anymore. After getting Test status, which they were desperate to attain, they got a little bit shelved during COVID and they went all in on white ball cricket, which actually makes a lot more sense, right? That's kind of where the money is now and that's where all the attention is. And they got players in the IPL. The way that Test cricket is going, it doesn't really put food on the table. The problem is they can't really stop playing Tests. That would look weird. Like, imagine the outcry if England offered them a Test match at Lords and they just said, nah, we've got a World Cup qualifiers coming up, we'd rather work on that. Although they probably would rather work on that. And it means that while they have some players, it is hard for them to develop in the modern setup as it is. Their best chance is for something almost magical to happen, like what happened here at Lords last time. And today, that did not happen. England had good conditions and they used them reasonably well, but Ireland played a huge part in their own downfall today. Today they looked like a team who doesn't play a lot of top quality red ball cricket. They looked a little bit like a geography teacher who got lost. Like, this is Peter Moore, the Zimbabwean raised, very tall batter, just walking across the stumps to a delivery on off and trying to flick it way too fine. It was an okay ball, but probably not one of the deadliest delivered today. If this looks like a player who's not played a lot of first-class cricket while opening the batting, well, he is a player who hasn't played a lot of first-class cricket while opening the batting. This was only the 15th innings in his life where he'd opened the batting, and he's opened in 4 games since 2015. This is essentially a photo of a Zimbabwean-raised Irish player who's used to the middle order and not how to play under clouds at Lords. This is Andy Balbirnie, who waited forever to go from Ireland captain-elect to actual on-field leader. And he was now back at his home ground, although, to be fair to him, he almost never actually played for Middlesex here at all. Today, he wasn't really at Lords all that much either. His shot was so bad that he may unsubscribe from seeing this channel just because I did a pause on it. I don't want to belabor the point, but you could probably drive a truck through the gap here. Or at least a decent-sized ice cream van. This is not what you want from your very experienced captain and number 3. I'm not sure this is what you'd want from, like, a number 9 who could bat a little bit. This one was Harry Tector, Ireland's best batter, and you can see the middle stump quite clearly here. That is a huge leap across your line early in the innings. But he did hit this ball. In fact, he pretty much middled it. But my question would be, why is he moving that much early on anyway? It also caused a problem, because as he walked out to bat, England moved mid-wicket into a leg slip position. They'd actually had one earlier, but gotten a little bit bored of it. But with Tector, it just kind of felt like a little bit more of a plan. And the way Broad celebrated, you have to say that this was exactly what they wanted to do. There is, of course, always a little bit of fluke with a leg slip catch, but it did feel like Tector walked across the line and into this. It is hard to be critical of an Irish opening bat who basically doesn't play any Test cricket, turning up at Lords on a greenish wicket with good bowling movement in the air, who has actually made some runs and batted a lot of time. But let me try. When it comes to McCullum, I think he plays late and has good patience. But is it possible he can only score through cover? That's actually how I felt at times today. That he stays leg side of the ball and he has very fast hands with a sort of angled cover drive, which he got away a couple of times. But that he doesn't really have many or any other shots. So I did a bit of a deeper dive into his first class cricket, where he has a good record. But the majority of his runs so far are from Irish cricket. But he's also made some from the A side as well. I think he actually is a very good player at the lower level. But I don't think he can survive a Test without the ability to score in more areas. The cover drive is a shot you need, but when it's your only shot outside of a flick to leg, that is a concern. His ball didn't actually do that much to the naked eye, but it probably straightened just that little bit up the slope here. Up the slope. I can't, yeah. So it was, yeah. Slopes that way, so it went up the slope. I got that right the first time. His ball didn't do much to the naked eye, or just the normal eye, even an eye with clothes on. But it probably straightened just a little bit up the slope here. And you can see that he is still playing very, very late and right under his eyes. The big problem for McCullum is that he's a specialist red ball player in Ireland. And they have decided that red ball cricket is just not for them anymore. A generation earlier, he's probably good enough to be playing county cricket, or at least second 11 cricket in the county, and his game would be so much more rounded as he was reaching his peak years. Now he's kind of on his own and then thrown into a bunch of matches without the kind of game development he probably needs. This is Andy McBride, and he probably got the best ball of the day. His feet didn't move much, but he's not really that kind of player. This really angled in and then moved away. No one in the world could have played this, not even our great pinch blocker. And I would never throw him under the bus anyway. But I think this was just a pretty normal defensive attempt to a good ball that got him. Now we get to Leach's 3 wickets as well. England had some theories about sweeping today. Both Paul Stirling and Lorcan Tucker are considered sweepers. With Stirling, they tried men up for a while, and then they went with a medium fine leg. I mean, I don't really know how to explain it, but it was like a fielder that wasn't short fine leg and wasn't on the boundary, but was like halfway between the two. They also had a fielder at square leg and then someone out on the boundary. It meant that to get boundaries, Stirling had to sweep very fine, but also still quite hard. And that was probably what did for him. He was trying to hit the ball just a bit too hard and a bit too fine at the same time. For Tucker, they didn't even put a sweeper out for his sweep. I thought at the time that this would be an ideal thing for someone who is a good sweeper. All you'd have to do is ensure that you just make contact a few times and you pick up a lot of easy runs early in your innings. He went with something else. First, he started in this position that we're showing you right now. That moved on to this position. It was a proper hop across the wicket to get here as well. And it should be pointed out that all innings he was moving around for pace and for spin. But it meant that when he went in for that sweep position, he did it a little bit more on the move than you would normally like to be. And again, he tried to hit the ball very hard, when perhaps the best option was just milking the field. Instead, there was nothing for him left to milk because he was out. And then there was Leach's last wicket. Now, there are some caveats here. The recognised batters were gone, and Kimber wanted to put pressure back on England. But as you can see, he's also just run down the wicket, nowhere near the ball, and tried to muller it across the line, missing it by line, by length, and just getting bowled. Just to make things worse, he didn't know he was bowled. So instead, he was diving back into his crease to save his wicket while England were already celebrating his demise. This image is probably a pretty good representation of how Ireland went today. Their coach, Heinrich Milan, said that they got themselves out. That is very true. They looked underprepared. Their board had kind of left them hanging, and England obviously got the best of the conditions. All of that is true. But also, Ireland just does not play a lot of tests. And today, that's how they looked.